It is now 6:30, and this is the Town of Dartmouth Conservation Commission's meeting for Tuesday, November 12, 2024. Conducting this meeting remotely since Governor Healy on March 29, 2023 signed legislation to further extend the hybrid remote meeting option for municipalities until March 31st, 2025. This meeting is accessible. Those who want to participate by speaking, there's a raise your hand feature at the bottom. And as I like to say, wave your hand if all else fails, and you will be recognized and allowed to speak on the topic at hand. We do have a quorum of commissioners present, and this meeting was duly posted at Town Hall and also on our website. So at this juncture, I am going to entertain a motion to go into executive session. May I have that motion, please?
So moved.
Second. We have a seconded motion. Roll call vote. Megan?
Yes.
Liz?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Nat?
Yes.
My vote is yes. That motion passes unanimously. We will now go into executive session. Resume the public hearing at the conclusion of executive session. We've just concluded our executive session. I had opened the meeting. For those of you who may not have heard, this is the Dartmouth Conservation Commission's meeting of Tuesday, November 12, 2024. The meeting is already opened, and I'll entertain now a motion to resume the public meeting.
So moved.
Second on that motion, please.
Second.
Seconded motion on the floor. Roll call vote. Liz?
Yes.
Nat?
Yes.
Richard? Richard?
Yes.
Okay. Megan?
Yes.
My vote is yes. We're back on the public hearing.
I'm
And-
getting a tremendous amount of static. Are you getting it too?
No, I'm not.
I
Yeah.
am too.
I hear it as well.
I don't hear any.
Do you mind if I chime in?
Go right ahead.
So I think this may be an issue you've been having for a little while now. I don't know where your microphone is, Mike. I don't know if you're rubbing papers on your microphone or because
No.
everyone else I notice gets the static, but you don't. It only happens when you're talking. So is your laptop, does your laptop have a built-in microphone that you're using?
It does.
So if
And
you're
it's-
running any papers over your laptop, then that's just rubbing over the microphone. It's a very loud noise for everyone else.
Okay, yeah, no, I actually have papers on the right side to pad of paper and on the left side, which is the agenda, but I'll be mindful
Yeah.
so I don't do it, but is this better?
No, You're
Yes.
perfect now, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe I did that. I apologize, guys. I might have done that inadvertently. But we're moving on now to the administrative portion. And the first, Mark, I'll let you take over. We now have a new conservation officer. So if you please do the introduction.
Yes, it's been a week now. Eduardo Fortes, who's with us tonight. Learning experience for him for the executive session and the open meeting. Eduardo has experience in wetlands and in the field. Now he's getting inundated with the paperwork side of the business. He's learning Dartmouth. He lives in Rhode Island, lives in Providence. So he's getting around and we're starting to assign him with tasks. So I welcome Eduardo as I did a week ago and introduce him to you folks this evening.
Thank you, Mark. Eduardo, welcome to the Dartmouth Conservation Commission. Hopefully this will be a wonderful, good learning experience for you. I know that your expertise is welcomed here, and probably Mark more so than anyone else, to be candid with you, but we certainly do appreciate your being on board and helping us do the best we can for the town of Dartmouth, at least in the conservation field. Any other commissioners wish to chime in? Please do so.
Nice meeting you, Eduardo. Welcome to the group.
Yeah,
Thank you.
welcome.
Welcome aboard.
Nice meeting you all. Appreciate the welcome.
You're very welcome. We're going to get now to the nitty gritty. We're going to approve, hopefully, the minutes of October 8th, 2024. May I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Seconded motions on the floor. Roll call vote. Liz,
Yes.
Nat,
Yes.
Megan,
Yes.
Richard.
Yes.
My vote is yes. That motion passes unanimously. Our next is the approval of the field trip reports of October 22nd, 2024. May I have a motion to that effect?
So moved. So moved.
Second.
We have a seconded motion on the floor. Roll call vote. Liz,
Yes.
Nat,
Yes.
Megan,
Yes.
Richard.
Yes.
My vote is yes. That motion passes unanimously. The final administrative item is to receive the minutes of October 22, 2024. May I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Seconded motion on the floor. Roll call vote. Liz,
Yes.
Nat,
Yes.
Megan,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
and my vote is yes. That motion passes unanimously. We're now moving to our field trip reports, and the first is a request for a certificate of compliance, DEP file 15-2317 RCC 24-34, to construct a slightly reoriented pool house with a shower and an outdoor kitchen to the east and a hot tub patio area to the west, the elimination of hardscape patio on the west, south, and east side of the pool, the addition of a fence surrounding the pool, several 4-foot-high masonry retaining walls and stairs, and an addition for the dwelling is proposed in the northeast corner. It's on land described as map 129, lot 33, otherwise known as 1 Redwood Street. Mark, what is staff's recommendation on this request for a certificate of compliance?
Staff recommends a complete certificate.
Okay. Any questions by any of the commissioners? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to issue a complete certificate of compliance on DEP file 15-2317.
So moved.
Second.
We have a seconded motion on the floor. Roll call vote. Liz,
Yes.
Nat,
Yes.
Megan,
Yes.
Richard.
Yes.
My vote is yes. That motion passes unanimously. Our second field trip report is a request for a certificate of compliance with DEP file 15-2651 RCC 2438 from Richard Rayum for Lisa Katz for the construction of an in-ground pool and patio at map 121, lot 36, otherwise known as 56 Captain's Lane. Mark, what is staff's recommendation on this request?
We are recommending a complete COC on this project also.
Thank you, Mark. Any commissioners have any questions?
Mr. Chair, I have to recuse myself from
Okay.
the vote on this.
All right, we'll have it noted that Richard Mallon has recused himself. That leaves us with 4 commissioners, which will require a unanimous vote. I'll entertain a motion for the issuance of a complete certificate of compliance.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
We have a seconded motion on the floor. Roll call vote. Liz,
Yes.
Nat,
Yes.
Megan.
Yes.
My vote is yes. That motion passes unanimously. The third field trip report is a request for a partial certificate of compliance, DEP file 15-2700, RCC 24-39. It's from Stephen Schmiel for David Lamoureux, who is seeking a partial sign-off for the wetland restoration work at map 116, lot 9-13, otherwise known as 27 Twin Ponds Drive. Mark, I'll certainly be interested in staff's recommendation on this request.
Yes, they're requesting a partial certificate for the restoration of impacted wetlands, which we are going to recommend to the commission this evening. It's a partial because they are going to come back with an amendment. They want to put a pool in a buffer zone area. So we thought the best approach was to get, because I did not want a new project without the successful restoration of the impacted wetlands. So I told them that I thought the best way to handle it would be to issue a partial certificate, and then they could come back with their amendment. So staff is recommending a partial COC limited to the restoration requirements included in the final order, file number 15/2700.
Okay. Any commissioner have any questions? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for the issuance of a partial certificate of compliance for the restoration of impacted wetlands relative to DEP file 15-2700.
So moved.
We
Second.
have a second on that? We have a seconded motion. Roll call vote. Liz,
Yes.
Nat,
Yes.
Megan,
yes,
Richard.
Yes.
My vote is yes. That motion passes unanimously. Our fourth field trip report is a request for an extension permit on DEP file 15-0389 RCC 24-8 for channel dredging at Allen's Pond Inlet on land described as map 6 lot 13. It's otherwise known as 14 Barney's Joy Road. Mark, staff's recommendation on this request, please.
Yeah, I'm going to open by saying that I am in favor of the project as the extension has been requested. However, I think it's important to note this is a 51-year-old order. This order was issued in 1983. And while the work is beneficial and does enhance the ecosystem and help to maintain a rather healthy and valuable ecosystem, the actual work is involved in land underwater and over a coastal beach. And when this permit was issued in 1983, we looked at things a little bit differently than we look at them now. And this is only a question that I have. Should we be reviewing this very beneficial project under the new scrutiny of coastal resilience and climate change and sea level rise, as opposed to relying on the old performance standards, which are still valid from 1983, but certainly have been enhanced? It's a philosophical question that I have, and this runs kind of parallel to some of the discussions we have with these ongoing continuances and other extensions in the inland situation. My gut feeling is that we should probably extend this at this time, because I'm bringing this up and nobody has brought this up prior to this extension being asked on this case. But I think we should make it known that if the commission so desires, that this could be the last extension, and we would be requiring them to refile again the next time they need to do the work.
Mark, I think that's a sensible solution to the issue, and I do remember this has come up before, where there's been requests for extensions upon extensions upon extensions, so that basically a maintenance plan is implemented without ever having to refile, even though regulations have changed, even though the performance standards, if you will, may well have changed. So I do think your recommendation for this particular request is a good one. And I do think it's something we as commissioners should give some thought to in our rules and regulations. So in other words, we won't entertain an extension request on a order of conditions that is more than, let's say 6 years old. So that would be, you'd get an extension. Maybe you want to make it 9 years, you give them 2 extensions, but after that, you've got to refile. So I think that's something we want to consider. But back to the point, I think Mark's recommendation on this particular request is a good one. Does any commissioner have any questions about that or any comments that they'd like to have heard? Okay, I don't see any. So at this juncture, I would entertain a motion to issue an extension permit on DEP file, and it's an oldie, 15-0389 with no further extensions to be granted.
That would be a 3-year extension?
Yes, that would be a 3-year. I'm sorry, I didn't say how long because that would be a 3-year extension. So
So
I think that's what they used to get before. So they were getting 3 years.
No, they actually were getting 5-year extensions when DEP allowed that.
Yeah,
We
that-
issued a 5-year in 2019, and that was just before DEP changed and said no more 5 years. The maximum is 3 years.
Well, we'd give them the 3 then. We can't give them a 5 anyway. So
You can't, no.
so we'll go with that to have a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Do we have
second,
a second on that motion?
second,
We have a seconded motion. Roll call vote. Liz,
Yes.
Nat,
yes.
Megan,
Yes.
Richard.
Yes.
My vote is yes. That motion passes unanimously. We're moving now on to the final field trip report. And that's a request for a request for determination of applicability. It's RDA 24-30. It's from Morgan and Kathy Mowbray for permission to fill voids between large stone armor stones to stabilize the existing MADEP licensed stone revetment on a coastal bank and within land subject to coastal storm flowage. The applicable regulations 310 CMR 10.02, 10.04, 10.30, and Section 2 of the Town of Dartmouth bylaws. The land is described as Map 88, Lot 34. It's otherwise known as 15 Gosnold Avenue. Mark, what is staff's recommendation on this request?
Yeah, this is just a restabilization of a normal coastal bank. We have reviewed several of these in the past, in the past recent hearings or meetings. This is that eastern facing shoreline of Salters Point, and the seawall, especially the chalk stones, have been, washed out and there are big gaps. This is just another segment of that wall. And having said that, staff is recommending a -2 determination with our standard erosion control condition, with the additional condition that work is to be limited to, or work should be staged from the lawn area within the 100-foot buffer zone to a coastal bank. However, should overwater or barge work become necessary, then there will be no grounding of the barge at any time, and a floating boom with hanging siltation curtain shall be deployed to isolate all work activities from adjacent and down gradient jurisdictional resources.
Thank you. Does any commissioner have any questions regarding this? Don't see any. So at this juncture, I'll entertain a motion to issue a -2 determination with our standard erosion control conditions and with the additional conditions that all work is to be staged from the lawn area as described by Mr. Garrett. And if any work is required to be instituted from the ocean area, that there be no grounding of the barges, and a floating boom, as Mr. Garrett described, would also be deployed to protect the resource area.
So moved.
So moved.
Second. We have a second to the motion. Roll call vote. Liz,
Yes.
Nat,
Yes.
Megan,
Yes.
Richard.
Yes.
My vote is yes. That motion passes unanimously. That concludes our field trip reports. We're moving now on to our public hearings. And the first public hearing is a continued public hearing on DEP file 15-2729. It's NOI 2417. It's on the notice of intent from Roger Fortier for permission to dredge a proposed footprint of, I've got 59,970 square feet, or 3,050 cubic yards of material from around existing docks and piles and land under the ocean and land containing shellfish. The regulations here are 310 CMR 10.02, 10.25, and 10.34, as well as Section 2 of the Town of Dartmouth bylaw. It's that the land is at map 112, lots 8 and 9. It's otherwise known as the New Bedford Yacht Club at 208 Elm Street. I'll entertain a motion to waive the reading.
So moved.
Second.
We have a seconded motion on the floor. Roll call vote. Liz,
Yes.
Nat,
Yes.
Megan,
yes,
Richard.
Richard has disappeared, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I know he likes to recuse himself, but okay, Richard is not here. I will vote. I will say yes. So that motion passes unanimously. And I see that we have a request by the applicant to withdraw the application, in this case, without prejudice.
Yes, I believe Mr. Brian Potvin from CEC is representing this. He's muted right at the moment, but he did make that request of us.
Well, I think that's a reasonable request, given what we've discussed previously on this at public hearings. I see no reason to deny it.
No, I think it's a good idea for all concerned. I don't want to take your thunder, Mr. Chairman. Brian, do you want to say anything?
No, not really. Just good evening, everyone. Brian Potvin from Civil and Environmental Consultants on behalf of the New Bedford Yacht Club. Yes, we would like to withdraw the application now without prejudice. We still have intention of implementing the dredge project and look forward to a new submittal here in the future.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank
Does
you.
any commissioner have any questions of either Brian or Mark? I don't see any. Is there anyone in the audience this evening that wants to speak to this request? Again, I don't see any, but there is a motion, there is a request made that this application be allowed to be withdrawn without prejudice. So at this point, I would entertain a motion to that effect.
So move.
Second. We have a seconded motion on the floor. Roll call vote. Liz,
Yes.
Nat,
Yes.
Megan,
yes,
Richard still hasn't returned. I will vote yes as well. That motion will pass unanimously.
Thank you all.
Thank you. We're now moving to the second public hearing. And this public hearing on DEP file 15-2753, NOI 24-43. It's on an after the fact notice of intent from Thiago Elves, who shall restore 1,940 square feet of unauthorized wetland impact to a bordering vegetated wetland, and then requests to put an addition onto an existing shed and to add a 2,000 square foot landscape parking area driveway within the 100-foot buffer zone to the bordering vegetated wetland. The regulations here are 310 CMR 10.02, 10.55, and 10. And Article 2 of the Town of Dartmouth bylaws. The land is described as map 65, lot 11. It's otherwise known as 1031 Old Fall River Road. I'll entertain a motion to waive the reading.
So moved.
Second on that, please.
Second.
Seconded motion. Roll call vote. Liz,
Yes.
Nat,
Yes.
Megan,
yes,
Richard, are you here? Nope, still not here. I will vote yes. That motion passes unanimously. Well, there's somebody here this evening to present this request.
I believe Carmelo Nicolosi is here for that. He's muted.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening.
Carmelo Nicolosi from Sharon Associates, representing Mr. Tiago Alves on an after-the-fact filing. We received our letter from Natural Heritage. I believe Mr. Garrett may have a copy of it,
I do, yes.
which says it will not adversely affect and will not result in a prohibitive take. We've also submitted into the portal the special conditions signed by the applicant as discussed at the last meeting. Mr. Garrett, do you have that?
I did see that today. I was going to report on that.
Okay. And I believe that you had the plan that we discussed at the last meeting that shows the driveway and other items.
Yes, that was the revised plan dated September 25th, 2024.
Correct. So essentially, this is an after-the-fact filing of work that was done in a resource area. There's some added work to it, a pool, I'm sorry, not a pool, but a driveway and some patio work. As stated in the special conditions, there's going to be a sequence of event that takes place, whereas the restoration project takes precedence over the work that's proposed. And like I said, we have signed conditions. I'll answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you. Mark, I'd be very interested to hear staff's observations on this particular application.
Yeah, so we discussed this briefly at the last meeting. This is an after-the-fact filing to restore 1,940 square feet of unauthorized bordering vegetated wetland impact caused by site clearing and a barn use, and then to request an addition onto the existing shed and 2,000 square feet of a landscaped parking area driveway. This is at 1031 Old Fall River Road. Based on staff's review of the revised plan, September 25th, 2024, and the accompanying Sebacia replication plan of the same date, as the record plan to this filing, staff recommends a standard order of conditions be issued, including the commission's restoration replication conditions, and also to include 3 additional conditions, which Mr. Nicolosi referred to. The first of the additional would be the restoration area shall be regraded and soils augmented so that both are consistent with the down gradient wetland condition. The second, as the growing season is waning, planting and regrading shall take place during the early spring to be installed no later than April 30th. The restoration work should also be completed and approved by staff prior to any other construction. And a fence line shall be established and maintained along the upgradient edge of the entire restoration area with signage affixed to every 30 feet indicating conservation plantings, no dumping or disturbance. And that's our staff's recommendation. Mr. Nicolosi has acknowledged the prioritization of getting the rest area completed and prior to any other work, and that's really an issue. And you know, the other thing that I need to highlight is it is now November 12th. Nobody's putting plants in now that are really going to succeed, no matter how mild the next couple of weeks are. Winter is too close; those plants would never be stabilized. Therefore, this planting probably should be an early spring planting and should be completed no later than April 30th of 2025.
Okay. Very good. Do any commissioners have any questions? I don't see any. Is there anyone in the audience this evening that wants to speak to this request? And I don't see any. So at this point, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second,
We have a seconded motion on the floor. Roll call vote. Liz,
yes.
Nat,
Yes.
Megan,
Yes.
Richard, if you're there. Apparently he's not. My vote is yes. That motion passes unanimously. I'll now entertain a motion to issue a standard order of conditions on the revised plan dated September 25, 2024, with our standard restoration condition, as well as the 3 separate conditions that were articulated by Mr. Garrett and which the applicant has already, at least digitally, signed as approved. And also that the sequencing here would be that the restoration be planted no later than April 30, 2025, and that must occur before any of the other matters, any of the construction requested commence.
So move,
Second.
Roll call vote. Liz,
yes.
Nat,
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
I still don't see Richard. My vote is yes. That passes unanimously. By the way, for the rest of the applicants, if Mr. Mallon doesn't show up, a positive vote will require a unanimous vote. So if you want to continue because you don't want to have that requirement, I think it only fair that you be given that opportunity to ask for the continuance and have it granted. But if you decide to proceed, it will require a unanimous vote unless he shows up. So we're moving now to our third public hearing, which is on DEP file 15-2757 NOI 24-46. It's on a notice of intent from Anthony Capuano for PRM Auto Holdings LLC to construct a 39,129 square, gross, what's GFA? GFA square foot car dealership and an accessory detached car wash with associated driveways, parking, auto carrier loading spaces, stormwater management measures, utility infrastructure, and landscape improvements, and also proposes an area to the east of the intermittent stream to be graded and paved to accommodate auto carrier loading spaces separately from Ventura Drive. The applicable regulations are 310 CMR 10.02, 10.55, 10.56, and Article 2 of the Town of Dartmouth bylaw. The land is described as map 63, lot 12, otherwise known as 411 Faunce Corner Road, the former Rose Motors site. With that, I'll entertain a motion to waive the reading.
So
So
move,
moved. Second.
We have a seconded motion on the floor. Roll call vote. Liz,
yes.
Nat,
Yes.
Megan,
Yes.
Richard, if you're here. Don't see him. My vote is yes. That motion passes unanimously. Is there someone here this evening on behalf of the applicant?
Yes, can you all hear me?
I can.
All right, good evening, everybody, Mr. Commissioner and members of the commission. And first off, Mr. Commissioner, just to answer your question, the GFA, it's gross floor area. So that's
Oh.
inclusive of first and second floor. There's a small mezzanine on the second floor of the building. So it's inclusive of that area as well. So just to clear that up.
Alrighty. Thank you very much.
All right, so to introduce myself, my name's Anthony Capuano. I'm a civil engineer and assistant project manager with Solely Engineering. We're based out of Norwood, Mass. And we're here on behalf of the applicant, which is PRM Auto Holdings LLC, for the application at 411 Faunce Corner. From the consultant side, I also have Tom Schutz with Goddard Consulting, sorry, who's our soil scientist on the project. So I'll give an overview of the proposed development, and then I'll have him give a summary of the wetlands on site, just talking about the existing functions of those wetlands, just to give the commissioners a better understanding of what we have out on site. Do I have the ability to share my screen so I can share the plans with everybody?
You should
Okay.
have that ability, yes.
All right, just let me know if everybody can see it.
I can. It did show up.
You guys got it?
I can see it.
All right, so just to give some overview on the site itself. So the site in total is 18 acres, consists of mostly undisturbed wooded area, which is currently also improved in the very front area, abutting Fons Corner Road with the former Rose Motor site, as the commissioner, the chairman stated, the Rose Motor site, as well as a secondary building on site with some gravel access drives and existing utilities. There's also an existing cell tower on the site, which is operated by American Tower Company, with existing electrical utilities that feed that tower off utility poles on the abutting Fons Corner Road. So that's just kind of a summary of the site itself. We've got 4 distinct wetland areas that are present on the site. The site itself has a very unique shape. It's very narrow and long. You'll see from these plans as I go through them that we've divided everything into 2 sheets, and it still doesn't encapsulate the entire length of this property with how far back it goes. But you'll see from, obviously in this front area of the site, we have a large central wetland with an intermittent stream running through it. As we move further back into the site, there's a small pocket of another wetland system that encroaches into our site in the area where our rear parking area is going to be. You've got another large wetland further back in the site, and then you'll see towards the very back yet another wetland system. So that makes up the 4 that are on this site currently, and this whole area is all currently wooded, with the only real disturbed area being where the Rose Motor site was in the front. So now moving into our proposed development itself. So as stated previously, we're proposing a 39,129 square foot gross floor area car dealership. So that includes the first floor footprint, in addition to, I believe, around a 5,000 square foot mezzanine that's within the building too on the second floor. To go along with that, there's a small detached car wash facility that's going to be located just to the east of the dealership. And then it'll also be improved with 50 parking spaces. So those parking spaces will be those that are available to employees and customers of the site, of the dealership. And then an additional 361 auto carrier spaces, which are your typical dealership spaces for the storage of vehicles. We've explored, just to give you a little bit of background, we've explored quite a few concepts of how to best approach this site. Seeing as it is so unique with its shape and the amount of wetlands that are present, we've looked into potentially using neighboring properties to see if we could avoid touching this central wetland at all. We've even explored the possibility of trying to put a bridge across this wetland. There's been quite a few concepts we've gone through, but we've now hopefully finally settled on a final development plan of using this front portion of the site for the dealership and the car wash itself. The entirety of the employee and customer spaces, in addition to some auto carrier spaces, and then in the rear of the site with this area, which will be accessed off 20 Ventura Drive, which is a property located on the neighboring Ventura Drive, to access a rear area that'll be used strictly for the auto carrier spaces. So anyone that's looking to look at cars, they can be grabbed by employees of the dealership and then brought out to the front. To go back to the front of the site, there'll be 2 curb cuts to access the site off of Fons Corner, which we've run for auto carrier loading trucks to make sure that they'll have adequate ability to circulate the site. And yeah, that's pretty much the summation of the front. The existing cell tower, as I mentioned before, is proposed to be maintained with no modifications to its fence or anything in relation to that. I'll move on to the grading of the site. So under existing conditions, the majority of the runoff from this front portion of the site flows from west to east, from the road to this central wetland located just along the right side of the page here. We're proposing to maintain that existing flow pattern with a series of catch basins and manholes and water quality units, which will convey stormwater into that wetland system before or first passing through one of two treatment measures. So we've got a subsurface detention system that'll be located just to the north of the building itself to serve for some detention and runoff mitigation. And then in addition to that, in the southeastern corner, we're proposing an above ground stormwater basin to provide some additional attenuation there. And water quality will be treated through two separate water quality units that all stormwater will pass through before they enter those basins and then eventually discharge out into the wetlands. And then in the rear of the site, similarly, everything is flowing from west to east towards another one of those large wetland pockets that's in the rear of the site. And in this case, we're proposing yet another stormwater basin that'll serve to attenuate the peak flows in that area, as well as a sediment forebay that'll achieve some of that water quality volume. I'll go on to mention this again later, but we have received comments from both DPW and the town's peer reviewing engineer. And part of that will most likely end up adding another water quality unit similar to what we have in the front to provide some additional water quality treatment in the rear of this site. To briefly go through our erosion control plans, we're proposing numerous measures, including anti-tracking pads, stockpile areas, silt fence, double row silt fence anywhere adjacent to wetlands, sediment traps in both the front and rear of the site, as well as diversion swale in the rear of the site to direct all stormwater during construction into those sediment traps to provide some erosion control and sediment control measures. Additionally, we have a utility plan where we're proposing for the site to be serviced by public water, gas, electric, sanitary. As I mentioned before, this cell tower has service that comes from Fons Corner Road. It currently actually passes through the center of where this building is proposed to go. So we are separately working with Eversource to have that connection rerouted to a new pole down in this southwestern corner and then run through our new parking lot in order to reservice the electric that's going to that cell tower. So it'll not be, or it will be obviously affected by the development, but it will be rerouted through a permit that we'll have done with Eversource. We have a robust landscaping plan as well that consists of a variety of native trees and shrubs, ground cover, seed mixes. Forgive me, I'm not a landscape architect, so I'll try not to butcher some of these names, but just so you guys are aware, there's a row of slender sweet gum trees along the frontage, as well as some Hixie yew shrubs, which will be visible from Fons Corner Road. There's also a number of trees and shrubs that'll be apparent through the parking area. And then in these areas that are directly abutting the wetlands, we're proposing a New England Conservation and Wildlife seed mix, as well as New England wet mix in the basins themselves. And that goes for the area in the rear as well, where these seed mixes will be installed around the basin. As far as lighting goes, there's a total of, I believe, 43 new poles going in. In addition, there'll be 32 wall-mounted fixtures on the building itself, and some bollard fixtures in front of decorative bollard lighting fixtures in front of the building as well. And the plan's been designed to best mitigate any light spillage over to property lines or into the wetlands. And all fixtures have been designed to be dark sky compliant and to minimize all light pollution. So that is pretty much the overview of the project itself. As I mentioned before, we have received comments from both DPW and the peer reviewing engineer. We've currently, to this point, worked through a majority of those comments, but specifically, I can bring up one of the comments involves doing some additional stormwater testing for those three stormwater practices, both those surface basins as well as the subsurface system. We're actively coordinating those tests as DPW has to be present for them. So we're actively trying to coordinate those, get those tests done pretty soon. And then once that is all done, we'll be able to pretty much wrap up our responses to both DPW and the peer reviewing engineer's comments and get those revised materials back over to the commission. So that's an overall summary of the project. Tom, if you're here, I'll give you the floor to talk a little bit about the wetlands themselves. I'm not sure if you want to share your screen or if you want me to just keep the survey up.
If I could share my screen, that would be great. Hi, everybody. Tom Schutz from Goddard Consulting. It's a pleasure to be in front of you tonight. I'm just going to share a brief aerial with you just to make sure everybody's aware of what the wetlands on the site currently look like. It looks like I have to send a request to share my screen. I just submitted that request. It says the host isn't allowing multiple presenters for this meeting, so I don't know if somebody could give me the floor.
That would be DCTV, who would allow you to share.
Mike, I'm back right now. We had electrical outlet shortage.
Glad that you're back.
Yeah,
Hopefully.
that makes two of us.
Would they be able to allow me to share, or I mean,
Uh,
otherwise we can just briefly go back to Anthony's presentation. Just wanted to show an aerial of the site, just in case the commission hadn't been aware of what the surrounding wetlands look like.
DCTV could please allow a screen sharing. That would be great.
Tom, if you want, do you just want like a Google Maps aerial?
I had the one with the
You should be able to
sketch
share.
originally. Okay, now I can share now. Perfect. Okay. So if everybody can see my screen properly, this is an approximation of where the wetlands fall on the site generally. They're pretty close to where you've seen them on the site plan, but obviously not survey grade. So as we look towards the west, here is Fawns Corner Road right here, and the existing conditions of the front part of the site. As you can see, it's mostly kind of a lot of garbage thrown around, and a lot of that stormwater is traveling right into these wetlands here. So there's no capture of the stormwater runoff running into this large wetland systems here. Additionally, in this wetland specifically, there is a lot of invasives, including buckthorn. There's also multiflora rose, and that makes up a good amount of the herbaceous layer within this wetland here. Additionally, we flagged a intermittent stream that runs directly through, and that's what this bordering vegetated wetland is actually physically bordering on. This intermittent stream draws water directly from stormwater runoff from the adjacent commercial developments, and then eventually makes its way down to the south of the site and then into these other developments. As we move through the center of the site, as Anthony noted, it is a quite long site with several wetlands on it. We have this small little section of bordering vegetated wetland, which is associated with this larger wetland here, but the wetland line didn't actually connect on site, so we just wanted to grab this little section of it. It's very similar to this front wetland with more of that invasive species kind of stuff. There's more natives as we go towards the east of the property. This bordering vegetated wetland is more of a higher functioning and has higher value to the site. It also has an internal intermittent stream which flows out of a pipe and a berm which is located towards the north of the property boundary. This one has more native trees and shrubs and serves more of a purpose, but won't be impacted as much from the proposed development itself. The highest functioning value wetland on the site is this larger bordering vegetated wetland to the south. It's got an unimpacted habitat corridor from this large forested area running down towards the south. There's no large commercial buildings back there, and there's not any kind of human impact for the buffer zone. This area and the associated upland is not proposed to be impacted, and in my opinion, the site in the project will have no impact on the highest functioning value wetland on the property. These ones in here will serve to continue to remove any stormwater, but then additionally have a the stormwater management systems for the property will serve to also increase the benefits for the site itself in general. So if you have any questions on the wetland itself, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, just to wrap it up. So like I said before, obviously we have those comments from DPW and the peer reviewer. Obviously, this is a very intensive project with a lot of impervious area, large buildings, lots of parking, multiple stormwater management systems. So we're aware it's a thorough common process. So we're working through all those now. We'll hopefully have those resubmitted soon to the DPW and the peer reviewer, and then take it from there. So we're obviously aware this hearing is obviously going to have to be continued. So just wanted to put that out there. We are aware that obviously the hearing will continue on to either the next meeting or the following. So I'm not sure if either the commissioners want to ask any questions or Mark, if you had anything you wanted to talk about now, feel free.
Well, I think it's appropriate if your presentation is concluded that, Mark, we hear at least staff's initial comments relative to this. We understand there'll be some changes as a result of ongoing investigations from other boards and or departments within the town. But I'd be curious for conservation staff's observations on this particular application.
Sure, Mr. Chairman. First and foremost, Anthony and I had a conversation earlier today, and we both agreed that this will have to be continued because we're going to have plan revisions. There may be some calculation revisions, and those have to pass muster through the stormwater review of both the town engineer, who's reviewing it under site plan review, and our own peer reviewer, who's reviewing it based on wetlands protection. So we have those two reviews going. Several comments were made by both parties, and they have been issued to the applicant's consultants, and they are working on the responses to those. Again, Anthony indicated that this is a 39,000 gross floor area auto dealership with a separate auto storage yard to the rear, with landscaping and utilities and stormwater drainage considerations, all within the 100-foot buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetlands of various locations. Aside from that concept proposal, the project proposes to directly impact approximately 200,000 square feet or 4.7 acres of land on the entire site. Of that, it proposes to impact 47,360 square feet or 1.09 acres of buffer zone. And this buffer zone impact represents 23% of the total developed area and is subject to conservation jurisdiction and regulation, most specifically under the bylaw. It also represents a very intensive land use in the front portion of the site, closest to Fawns Corner Road. The entire site is approximately 18.46 acres. The site itself supports 3 separate wetlands, and there's that one wetland to the south that encroaches to the edge. They have been properly delineated by Goddard Consulting. Both Eduardo and I have walked the entire site. We have visualized all of the wetlands and all of the wetland flags, and they seem reasonably accurate in the field. So I have no problem with those designations. We talked about the stormwater being reviewed, and these issues have to be responded to. And one of the things that I raised to our consultants, and I understand the practicality of the ultimate outfalls from these detention basins, but they are very proximal to wetlands. And while I have no problem with them being there, I do want the stormwater treatment to be appropriate so as we're not discharging poor water quality into the wetland systems. Of note, Tom spoke of the undisturbed wetland to the rear of the site, the last or the fourth wetland, I believe as he referred to it. That is really the edge of the Pascamanset River corridor. Not too far east of this site is the main stem of the Pascamanset River. There is associated BVW with that, probably the highest quality BVW that encompasses the site, as Tom said. And a portion of that is also designated habitat under Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program, both estimated and priority habitats. I raised that only about the value of the property. In total, it should be considered, but I also acknowledge that the applicant has made every effort to move the required development, as is required by the auto industry today, to the most forward portion of the site, and I commend them for that. The concern I have is the intensity of the buffer zone use in that front portion of the site. However, I do acknowledge that the buffer zones to the rear of the site are pretty much left intact. And in discussions with Anthony earlier, I believe the applicants have done feasibility for the further development of the rear of the site, which they found to be unfeasible. And one of my suggestions as a mitigative option at this point, and subject to discussion, is that the applicant might consider establishing a deed restriction on the rear portion of the site to the east of the last detention basin, in which there would be no further development. That would preserve the floodplain, that would preserve the valuable wetland to the rear, the designated habitat, and the other wetland which crisscrosses the site. And I think that would be an appropriate mitigation for the intense use up front, which I, again, don't have any problem with. I understand why they're doing it and why they need to do it. That would be, a subject for, I think, a future discussion and consideration as we move this process forward. The last thing I would say is the slopes that transition from the development to the wetlands. It was mentioned that that would be seeded with standard seed mix. I would say that's fine, but I would also like to see some shrubby vegetation, transitional vegetation moving up the slope. We've done this to the site immediately north, which we'll be discussing in a little while, the Pascomansit land development site, as a transition from wetlands in close proximity to some intense development, and it's worked out very well. So at this point, I don't want to go on. I just threw out some ideas, some that we discussed these earlier, both Anthony and myself, and would certainly be interested in further discussions as this hearing is continued. I think that the applicants and their team should sit around and talk about this before committing at this point. So my recommendation to the commission is we have some outstanding issues that have to be addressed, which the applicant is in the process of addressing, and we might have some other tweaks to the plan and to the land uses. So I would recommend a continuance. Given the extent of the work that we're talking about, and I'll leave this to Anthony because we did discuss this, and it's his hearing to request. Our next hearing is on the 26th. That's in 2 weeks and 2 days. We are approaching the holiday season. I don't know when they're going to get the site visit scheduled, and I don't know how long it is going to take for them to generate results that do have to be reviewed again by DPW and our peer review consultant. And therefore, I suggested maybe continuing this to the 10th of December, which is 2 hearings out, as opposed to trying to cram it into next hearing, the 26th of November, and ending up finding out that we're not ready for the 26th. So that's just a suggestion I put out there, but I'm willing to continue this to whatever date the commission and the applicant seems find appropriate.
Yeah, to echo Mark's point, yeah, we did discuss that earlier. And like he said, based on the intensity of the development, the intensity of the comments, while we will be able to respond to all of them, it's certainly going to take some time for DPWA and the peer reviewer to then re-review and then issue comment if they have any additional. So with the time frame, with the holidays, it does make sense in the applicant's mind to continue this to the meeting on the 10th. So 2 meetings from now.
Yeah, December 10th you're talking about.
Yes.
Yes, December 10th.
Yes.
All right. Does any commissioner have any, at this point, I know it's not final, but any comments or questions they'd like to address this evening? And I don't see any. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak this evening on this matter, understanding that there will be a motion made for continuance until December 16th? So you would have the opportunity at that meeting to speak as well. I don't see any. So, commissioners, at this juncture, I would entertain a motion to continue this public hearing until Tuesday, December 16, 2024 at 7 p.m.
Correction, Mr. Chairman, Tuesday, December 10th.
Oh, what did I say?
2024.
16th? I'm sorry, December 10th. Thank you. I can't read my own writing sometimes.
So
So
moved.
moved.
So we have a motion on the floor. It was second.
Second.
Okay, well, we have a seconded motion. We'll do a roll call vote, and this is for a continuance until December 10th, 2024 at 7 p.m. Roll call vote. Liz,
Yes.
Nat,
Yes.
Megan,
Yes.
Richard.
Yes.
My vote is yes. That motion passes unanimously.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everyone, for your time.
Thank you. Our fourth public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, if I could chime in real quickly on this one. I had sent you an email about a typo on this particular item. The file number should not read 152753. It should read 152709. And the citation should not be NOI 2443. It should be AOOC 24-3.
AOOC 24-3. All right, so our fourth public hearing is a public hearing on D file 15-2709, AOOC 24-3. It's on the request for an amended order of conditions from Pascamanset Land Company to modify the following features on the current plan of record, and that's FN 15-207, to include reducing the size of the infiltration basin, to modify the steel orifice plate on the outlet control structure and the basin's underground utilities. Additional work also includes installation of a portion of the parking lot catch basin, a drain manhole, and a riprap flared end section associated with the underground infiltration system. The existing infiltration basin located on the westerly side of the property will be expanded, as well as modification of the steel orifice plate within the control outlet structure. The regulations are 310 CMR 10.02, 10.55, and Article 2 of the Town of Dartmouth bylaw. It's on land described as map 65, lot 34-5. It's otherwise known as 481 Faunce Corner Road. I'll entertain a motion to waive the reading.
So moved.
We
Second.
have a seconded motion. Roll call vote. Liz,
Yes.
Nat,
Yes.
Megan,
Yes.
Richard.
Yes.
My vote is yes. That motion passes unanimously. And is there someone here this evening on behalf of the applicant?
Yes, good evening, members of the commission. My name is Joseph Sanda with Allen and Major Associates. I'm here on behalf of the client Pascamanset Land Company, who requests an amended order of conditions for the development of 481 Faunce Corner Road. With your permission, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to share my screen.
Yes, you certainly can.
Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, it's legible to me anyway.
Okay, perfect. So my client is requesting an amended order of conditions for the development of 481 Faunce Corner Road, which is going to be a 3-story residential building with 64 units. The intent behind the request for an amended order of conditions rather than filing a new notice of intent is due to the multi-phase approach my client is taking for the development of the properties in the area under common ownership. The commission had previously seen a notice of intent application at the end of 2023 for the development of 491 Fonts Corner Road, which is the medical office building located on the north side of the access drive over here. Within that notice of intent, the infiltration basin number 2, which is located on the east side of the proposed building, was proposed, as well as the underground infiltration system. The notice of intent was ultimately approved through the issuance of an order of conditions with a DEP file number of 015-2709. The development of 481 Fonts Corner Road will require the reduction of the overall size of infiltration basin 2, given the proposed building footprint, and the modification of the layout of the underground infiltration system. The elevations of the chambers, as well as the quantity of the chambers, is exactly the same as what was permitted through the notice of intent. The layout is modified, again, given the proposed building footprint. And given the request for the reduction of area in infiltration basin 2, my client is requesting to expand infiltration basin 1, which is located on the westerly side of the property, to make up for the loss of storage volume. On both infiltration basin 1 and 2, the steel orifice plate would have to be modified to control the stormwater release from the basins. And as stated in the reading at the beginning, the additional work within the wetland resource area buffer zone will be the installation of a portion of the parking lot, a water quality catch basin, a drain manhole, and the outlet riprap flared end section for the underground infiltration chambers. In addition, the development will have typical grading within the wetland resource area, most notably over by the underground infiltration system, which is proposed to be a 2-to-1 slope, which will be equipped with erosion control fabric. So with that, I do also want to state that the project is currently under site plan review with the planning board and is currently being reviewed by DPW. We have received some preliminary comments on the development and are working through those now, and are planning to sit in front of the planning board at their meeting next week. So with that being said, I would like to open it up to the commission and Mr. Garrett for any questions or comments.
Thank you. Mark, at this point, it would be appropriate for staff's comments to be heard.
Yes, as Mr. Sanders said, this is a request for an amended order, as Pascomansit Land Company owns the entirety of both this site and the site to the north. And the drainage that Mr. Sanders was talking about are features that were designed for the northern portion of the site to include conditions that are being proposed on the southern portion of the site. The geometry of the new building, the 3-story residential, and its parking impact the layout of the drainage system as it has been constructed in the field. They need to modify that. They will be working in buffer zone of 2 wetland areas. And so they need to modify the conditions under file number 2709. And I think that is a reasonable approach. The highlights to this are very simple. They're taking a certain amount of square footage and cubic volume out of detention basin 2, which is the detention basin to the right side of the screenshot that you're looking at. And they're putting in addition that volume that they're losing onto detention basin 1, which is the tongue that extends south from the existing basin as an extension. They are modifying the orifices, the outlets, and the subsurface infiltration basin under the parking lot. The footprint of the building and the parking lot do extend into the buffer zone. You can see to the east the very steep slope. I would, again, as I referenced in the previous case, and this was the site that I was referring to, we have required that Pascomansit Land do some transitional shrub plantings on the side slopes going from the wetlands up to the building to the north, and we would ask them to do the same to the south. In a meeting that we had earlier this month with DPW and the applicant, it seemed like that sloping would work. So I will take the professionals at their word at this point, but they would need to incorporate some shrub plantings to transition from that wetland up to the parking lot, along with the seating that they typically use the environmental seating on the side slopes. We do have several comments from DPW. I should note that the peer reviewer reviewed this under the original notice, and given the changes, although they seem large scale, they really aren't. And we felt that DPW at this point, considering the fact that the water treatment, the water quality issues were going to remain the same as previously proposed, that a DPW review would satisfy the requirements of the actual quantification of runoff and detention and things of that nature. So that's why they are the ones doing the review at this point. Given that we haven't gotten responses to those questions and some of the questions that I had raised during that meeting, to date, I am recommending that this be continued. I'm assuming the 26th would be an appropriate date for this, but I don't want to speak for the applicant. But we do need to get the materials in hand for proper review. And again, I must indicate that to the applicant that these reviews sometimes get pretty heady, and if you wait till the last minute to get us the stuff, sometimes the reviews don't get completed in time. So we would have to continue again until we get satisfactory resolution to any comments raised. So we are in need of a continuance. I will leave the date to the applicant to make that determination at this point. I don't think this is time critical as we're getting into the winter months, but again, I don't want to prejudge the situation. So my recommendation is to continue to a date determined by the commission and the applicant.
Thank you, Mark. Commissioners, any questions? I can't see very much, because if you could stop the screen sharing, that would be helpful. Thanks.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Any commissioners have any questions? Alrighty. Is there anyone in the audience this evening that wants to be heard tonight on this application, with the understanding we're likely to be voting on a motion to continue? Okay, I don't see any. Joseph, you heard that Mr. Garrett is recommending a continuation of this, and he's suggesting perhaps that the 26th of November, which is our next scheduled public hearing, would be appropriate. Do you think you would have everything to conservation in time for them to review it for that meeting? And by the way, that gives you a lot less than 2 weeks.
Yes, absolutely. I would like to request a continuance to the 26th with the intent to get the material over to Mr. Garrett as soon as possible.
All right. That being said, at this juncture, entertain a motion to continue this public hearing until our next scheduled public hearing on November 26, 2024 at 7 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. So we'll do a roll call vote. Liz,
Yes.
Nat,
Yes.
Megan,
Yes.
Richard.
Yes.
My vote is yes. That motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you for your time.
Okay, we're moving now to our final public hearing, and it's public hearing on DEP file 15-2758, NOI 24-44. It's on the notice of intent from Rami Sedan to first restore unauthorized buffer zone impacts, then to demolish the existing single-family dwelling, to construct a new single-family dwelling house with the associated grading. That's the applicable regs are 310 CMR 10.02, 10.55, as well as Article 2 of the Town of Dartmouth bylaw. It's on land described as map 165, lot 35. It's 15 Delano Street. At this point, I'll entertain a motion to waive the reading.
So moved.
A second, please.
Second.
Seconded motion, roll call vote. Liz,
Yes.
Nat,
Yes.
Megan,
Yes.
Richard.
Yes.
My vote is yes, that motion passes unanimously. And is there someone here this evening that will be speaking on behalf of the applicant?
Yes, my name is Rami Sidani. I'm from North County Group. I'm representing the property owner, True Brother, Francis Grisot, and filing for a notice of intent to demo the existing house and build a single-family house with the associated grading. The existing house has been abandoned for many years and is in a dilapidated shape. The Board of Health has issued several warnings for the owner to act on pest control, and there's a long list of requirements. It's to a point where the house cannot be fixed. It's too far gone for the house to be fixed. It's been abandoned for years and years. So our client wants to demo the house as soon as possible and build a single family house. It's a 2-car garage. It's not a large house. It meets all the zoning regulations. And there was a notice of intent filed for an after the fact this past summer, I believe it was in August, for work done without a notice of intent. And we are proposing to mitigate on site in the buffer zone and on the western side of the property with high bush blueberry shrubs and eastern red cedar or American holly trees. We have a total of 130 shrubs and 24 trees to be planted in the buffer zone and on the western side of the property. There's also approximately 4,000 square feet of grass that will be seeded with wildlife seed mix. We are proposing a silt barrier around the entire work area on site. And there will be an asphalt driveway for the 2-car garage, and there's a hammerhead shaped driveway. We're gonna have a new sewer connection, a new water line coming to the proposed house. Any questions from the board?
Excuse me, thank you. I would, at this point, like to hear from Mr. Garrett. Excuse me, on any comments that staff may have on this proposal.
Yeah, Mr. Sidani represented the case pretty accurately. The house, the property going back now probably at least 6 months, probably closer to a year, was an overgrown site. It had a dilapidated house on it, which has been the subject of several Board of Health issues. The house has deteriorated to the point where it cannot be restored or refurbished. It has to be demoed. The applicant went in, did a fair amount of cutting. The entire site is pretty much in buffer zone, the dilapidated structure included, and did a fair amount of cutting of overgrown vegetation without permits within our jurisdiction, and that was the subject of the initial after the fact notice of intent. No restoration plan was proposed at that time. We issued an order of conditions requiring that a further notice of intent would need to be filed for site redevelopment that would include a restoration plan. That was accomplished. Took some time to get a satisfactory restoration plan in place, but we finally did on a revised plan dated October 31st of 2024. Given that we have an appropriate restoration plan, I certainly support the redevelopment of the parcel with a single family home, as was the use, and is very equivalent to the other developments in the neighborhood. This is a small lot, single family residential area. And I certainly think that the project is conducive to what the pre-existing condition was. Having said all that, staff is recommending we issue our standard order of conditions to include standard restoration conditions for the buffer zone restoration, plus the following additional conditions. As the growing season is waning, planting and regrading shall take place during the early spring and shall be installed no later than April 30th, 2025. A fence line shall be established and maintained along the upgradient edge of the entire restoration area, with signage affixed every 30 feet indicating conservation plantings, no dumping or disturbance. And last, no construction shall occur until the site restoration program has been installed to the approval of the conservation staff. And that is only for installation. That doesn't mean that the restoration has succeeded. That requires a year through growing season minimally and monitoring reports. The approval is only that it was installed in accordance with the plan of record. And that plan of record would be the plan dated October 31st, 2024.
Thank you, Mark. Does any commissioner have any questions, either of the applicant or of staff?
I have a question, just to clarify Mr. Garrett's comment. If once the Dartmouth Conservation Commission issues the order of condition, when can the applicant demo the house and build a new house? Is there a time restriction?
After he has planted the restoration area in accordance with the plan of record.
Okay, after all the plantings are done.
Yes.
Now we're-
To conservation staff's approval.
Okay.
So Mark, even just the demolition is, I understand the construction of the new structure, but even the demolition would have to wait until next year?
Well, I mean, it's, I guess the demolition could take place.
Yeah, because I'm thinking if the house itself is a subject of Board of Health issues, et cetera, the sooner it gets raised, the better we are. But I
Well,
certainly,
it was subject to Board of Health when there was a person residing in it.
oh, well,
It's not so much an issue now, but the person is no longer there. But I would concede the demo can take place prior to the completion of the plantings. But no redevelopment.
yeah, I think that's appropriate, Mark.
Okay, I can do that.
I think does that satisfy your concern?
So, as far as the plantings, can it be done now, or does it have to be wait till early spring?
Well, you're not going to have plants that are going to survive if you plant them now.
No, yeah. So be early spring, early March.
Yeah, I think so. Otherwise,
I said that they could be planted they should be planted no later than April 30th. You can plant them in March if it's suitable. Just understand that if the plants fail, they've got to be replanted again. And that if they fail, they're not to the satisfaction of the conservation staff. So you're just prolonging the issue. I think, you got to give up building the house during the winter. Get the plantings in next spring. We will okay it if it's done appropriately to the plan of record, and then you can proceed accordingly.
Okay.
okay. Does any commissioner have any questions?
No.
Is there anyone in the audience this evening that wants to be heard on this application? I don't see any. So at this juncture, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
I have a second on that, please.
Second.
We have a seconded motion on the floor. Roll call vote. Liz?
Yes.
Nat?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
My vote is yes. That motion passes unanimously. I'll now entertain a motion to issue a standard order of conditions on the plan dated October 31, 2024, with our standard restoration conditions, as well as the following additional conditions. That the restoration plantings should be done in the spring with complete plantings by April 30, 2025. As Mr. Garrett has stated, there will be a fence line along the perimeter of the property with signage indicating conservation land and no dumping every 30 feet. There will also be no construction undertaken until the restoration plantings have been installed per the plan of October 31, 2024, and approved by staff. However, the existing structures may be raised or demolished prior to that time.
So moved.
Second.
We have a seconded motion on the floor. Roll call vote. Liz?
Yes.
Nat?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
My vote is yes. That motion passes unanimously. That concludes the public hearings. We now move on
Thank you.
for, oh, you're welcome. We now move on for our items of discussion. We don't have any bills. We will now go to office status and the wetland bylaws and regulations. I'll turn the floor over to you, Mark. We've already know a little bit about our office staff situation.
Well, you got the good part of it.
Yeah,
I'm gonna give you the bad part of it. I think I reported to you last time, we had we were going to make the offer, or we did make the offer to Eduardo and he had accepted it. But we also had a secondary issue in which they were they had posted a floater position of which conservation office was going to get 17.5 hours of administrative support from this floater, along with the collector's office. We had an in-house candidate who was ready to go. We interviewed her. She seemed very suitable, and at the last minute, she changed her mind. So we do not have that candidate anymore. They're re-advertising. They do have candidates. I do not know what the shortlisting of those candidates are. So that process for administrative support continues to wane. So that's where we stand on that. In terms of the wetland bylaw and regulations, I sent out to you a scanned copy of a letter from the AG's office approving the wetland bylaw that was voted on at the Springtown meeting. So that is officially our bylaw now, and that's what we will be working with and have been working with since the letter dated November 4th, which was what I sent to you. I was, having not been through that kind of process, I had asked town council for some clarification and they gave it to me. I included those emails to you just as an FYI. Now that we have an approved bylaw, we have our draft regulations, which we have worked somewhat to get in compliance with the bylaw. And I sent you a draft copy of the latest draft of those, which we had approved of, but we knew that there would be some additional work going forward to finalize this before we went to public hearing. Related to one of the field trip reports we discussed earlier, there have been some concerns about these ongoing extensions. And we kept saying, well, we'll handle it in the regulations. Well, we do handle extensions in the bylaw. And so I think we need to be a little bit careful about anything we do in the regulations to speak to extensions. I personally think that the modifications we made to extensions in the bylaw is fully appropriate and consistent with what we've been talking about. I think we just have to enforce them. That's my comment on extensions. In terms of continuances, we did address continuances appropriately in the bylaw portion of this. I don't think we have to speak to it in the regulations any more than we have. I'm trying to find the section where it is. It's under procedures. Well, the town meeting did vote on specific language to continuances. So for us to revisit it in the bylaw, in the regulations, I don't think that's necessarily appropriate at this point. Yeah, we talked about it on page, well, it's on page 25, but that's of the town meeting warrant. Relative to continuances, the commission shall have the authority to continue an open public meeting to the next regularly scheduled meeting of the commission, provided that such continued date must be announced during the public hearing or during the meeting of the commission at the previously scheduled time and location of the public hearing. If the commission lacks quorum for a public hearing, further provided that such continued date shall be in compliance with section 366D. And D reads, any public hearing that is continued by the commission beyond the date which the public hearing was actually open shall be closed by the commission at the next regularly scheduled meeting of the commission at which a quorum is present, but no event later than 60 days after the public hearing is opened, which I think is very specific. We're talking about, we open a public hearing, we have up to 60 days to continue it, which is 2 months, basically, 4 meetings or 3 meetings. And then you can consider to extend that 60 days at your discretion based on the applicant making the case for such an extension. So I think we're actually good with that in the bylaw, and we don't really need to doctor up anything in the regulations on either of those matters. The one outstanding issue that I think we need to discuss is deep in the regulations. We have been having this kind of open discussion about this, and I gotta find it. And that would be the, I inserted a section for inland regulations in which, what the heck did I do? 1617. Okay, yeah. This is in part 2 of the inland regulations. And we were talking about freshwater wetlands, and the old version of the bylaw, well, in the old version of the bylaw and regulations, we never specified how big a freshwater wetland needs to be jurisdictional. The way it's written is literally any puddle of water could construe being a freshwater wetland if it meets the 3 parameters. However, one of the parameters is not surface area. And I think there's a practical matter here in which a little patch of cattail is probably not very functional. It may be pretty if you like cattails, but there's a de minimis value to, small size pockets. So I was thinking about setting a minimum size. Now we have a minimum size for land subject to flooding of 1,000 square feet, which is not really that big. And I was thinking 2,500 square feet maybe for a wetland, but over the course of time, I've been thinking more and more that the 1,000 is more consistent and probably more appropriate. So in essence, what I'm saying is if we have a freshwater wetland, which is a non-bordering condition, and it is less than 1,000 square feet, it's not jurisdictional. And that would throw out a lot of these backyard pockets that are completely surrounded by yard area, pools, and everything else, as opposed to a broader kind of kettle hole wetland. And again, I don't know where the 1,000 feet came from for land subject to flooding, isolated land subject to flooding. However, I think that would be a consistent and appropriate number to incorporate into the regulations. And I just throw that out for discussion.
Is that consistent with the bylaw?
We don't speak to it. The bylaw just defines freshwater wetlands as being something. They don't, it doesn't speak to a size.
Oh, I understand that, but I think this is really the same issue, just different subject, but the same issue we just went through with the continuances. You articulated where the bylaw talks about our ability to grant continuances, and what we were talking about was limiting the amount of continuances over a period of time. And I know we have that right under the bylaw, but we were, I thought, going to sort of articulate something there, which would be a warning to any applicant, don't bother filing to be denied. However, I mean, I'm okay with that. But now we want to articulate a limit where we have no limit in the bylaw. Isn't that the same issue?
Well, I disagree because we're talking about procedures when we're talking about continuances and extensions. We're talking about jurisdiction when we're talking about the size of a resource area. We discussed
Isn't that
this.
even more, isn't that really more important then to be in the bylaw? Because that's what's
Well, let me finish. I brought this up in the bylaw and we basically decided to put it in the regulations. So was not put in the bylaw to be put in the regulations. And now I'm asking, do you want to do it? And I had offered originally 2,500 square feet, but I'm now leaning towards 1,000 square feet. We haven't voted on this. This has not gone to town council. This has not gone to a public hearing. So it's basically an issue that we have to decide.
Yeah, I'm not inclined to put a limit on it, frankly. Somebody could file a request for determination, and if we think it's de minimis and not worthy, we'd say, all right, we're going to give you a negative determination. I mean, I think that's why it wasn't in the bylaw, but I may be wrong. I'm not going to suggest that what I just said was something that was kicked around and debated, and that's the conclusion. But
I think I disagree when the bylaw specifically speaks to protecting wetland values, and at some point a patch of ground no longer provides value except for its existence. Now, from a wetlands perspective, I don't think that a little puddle of water provides wetland functions and values. I think it provides wet. That's what it provides. Again, if you want to delete the whole thing, I'm fine with it. I personally think that a size requirement or a size threshold is reasonable, and 1,000 square feet is not all that big. What's the square root of 1,000?
No, I realize it's not a very large area. And I'm not suggesting to you that there would be instances where you would, well, maybe there could be, but I'm not suggesting it's likely that there would be instances where something that was smaller than that would be considered substantial enough to be protected. However, well, it's up to commissioners. I'm sort of torn by that and saying, well, they have the ability to have that determination be a negative one. which is not a tremendous inconvenience. If they're coming in and saying, here is our plan, it shows that this is only 882 square feet. There's really not much that we'd have to do except to say, well, we agree it's not substantial enough, doesn't warrant you getting an order of conditions. God bless you. But if you want to make a provision that says anything less than this is automatically not something for us to worry about, you don't have to even file that request for determination of applicability. I'm just a little concerned we got a slippery slope there where we're making a determination without really having anybody ask us. And I'm okay, we're just cutting against the bylaw at that point. But okay. I think it's worth
The square root of 1,000 is 31 point something.
0.623.
Yeah.
And I'm not suggesting it's large. Not at all.
Would the pro of the situation be that the hope would be there would be less filings because of the?
Yeah, it would eliminate useless filings is what it would do.
And if for some reason in 5-10 years there was some sort of reason to want to change back, would that be an opportunity?
You can amend the regulation any way you want, sure.
Okay.
How likelihood is a scenario that you've got a wetland resource that's less than 1,000 square feet, but it has, I don't know, a healthy population of endangered salamanders? Like, is that a realistic thing?
That would be a vernal pool question.
Yeah, okay, fair.
I mean, the reality is this: we have neighborhoods in Dartmouth, South Dartmouth being one of them. The area off of Cross Road being another one, where you Hicksville Road, it's the southern end of Hicksville Road between Cross Road and Fawns Corner, where you have these tight little neighborhoods that literally have encroached on wetlands. They have filled wetlands when you could, and nobody cared. And now what you have is these little artifact pockets of water. And right now they're protected. And, you know, there is a point where the applicant or the property owner asks why, and it's, well, because it's wet. Well, that's an answer, but it's not always a great answer. And I think, you know, when you're writing regulations that talk about wetland values and wetland functions, it gets pretty hardcore to defend functionality in a very small patch. Just is. You know, Paden Village is the same way. You've got a lot of these small little pockets. We dealt with one not too long ago. We had 2 feuding neighbors over a little pocket of nothing, but it met the definition because there was no size criteria. So we had to enforce it. And, you know, it was a lot of money to protect, in my opinion, as a professional wetland scientist, not a lot of value, but that's just how I saw it. I had to enforce it as the regulations saw, not how I felt. We don't have to come up with an answer tonight. Frankly, I just got you this stuff. You know, you may want to think about it. We can talk about it again on the 26th.
Yeah, I
Maybe
think
that
I'd
would
like
be-
a little more time to think about it.
That's fair enough. And I suggest that everyone go take a look at what was sent and mark up what was sent with your own comments. So when we do discuss, we'll have actual, you know, because it may be more than just that. So take a look at what you see. Because these were kicked around at the time we were kicking around the ideas for the bylaw, but the bylaw then took precedent because it went before town meeting.
Well, no, this was after that. We actually, the copy you have in front of you is a copy that went beyond. We were doing that review after the bylaw was passed by town meeting to be prepared to go forward with the regulations. So this is a newer version. We have vetted this, but we have newer members, and I'd be very interested to hear what they have to say. I mean,
I would
Richard,
too.
Nat, and Mike, you've been down this road over a couple of years with me. We've got Liz and we've got Megan who haven't looked at it. Eduardo could look at it also as the conservation officer and make suggestions. We got three new sets of eyes. So I'm willing to listen to anything. I'm just raising an issue where I think a size criteria might be a prudent way to go. Again, it's your decision, it's your regulations, they're not mine. So I'm just making an editorial suggestion. What I would say, though, is that we shouldn't languish. I mean, we're getting into the holiday season. Things are going to be really busy over the next 2 to 3 months. We still, to get these regulations finalized, we still have to have a public hearing on them. We still have to go to the select board with them. They still have to be reviewed by town council. So we have 3 steps out in front of us. So we need to get ourselves squared away because now we need to get the regulations in line with the bylaw. We have the bylaw finalized. Now we have to get the regulations to tie into those. And I think we're pretty close. I think we're dealing with some minor issues that have to be addressed. And I would entertain any additional comments, from anybody, but especially from the new people, just to get their sense of this, was they were not involved at all.
Good point.
So why don't we plan on rescheduling a discussion on the 26th for this? Does that work for everybody?
Works for me.
Yes.
Okay, then that's
Works
what
for
we'll
me.
do.
Yes,
And Mark,
That's
sorry,
all I got, folks.
Mark, sorry, you said that the 1,000-foot language was in the most recent version, or
No,
it's just some.
no, what's in the most recent version is 2,500,
Okay.
which is 50 by 50. Okay. 1,000 is 31 point whatever by 31 point whatever. So that's the differential in dimension. Obviously wetlands are not perfect squares, so they tend to be irregular. 1,000 square feet is a number that has been used in the past to designate a quantifiable justification for a protectable resource area. And as I've thought about it, originally I didn't like it for this, but I'm convincing myself it's probably the better number. But the 1,000 has never been written down for this.
Yeah. Okay. I see the specific language. I was just I was just looking for it. Okay.
Any enforcement issues that we haven't discussed?
None that we want to discuss. No, we've got stuff ongoing. We're working on it. We have, we closed one out tonight. We closed out 27 twin ponds. We're getting there, slowly but surely.
That's good news. All right. I have nothing further to add to the meeting. Does any commissioner have anything they want addressed? Not seeing any. I want to entertain a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Second.
We have a seconded motion. Roll call vote. Liz,
Yes.
Nat,
Yes.
Megan,
Yes.
Richard.
Yes.
My vote is yes. That motion passes unanimously. Have a good evening, everyone.
Take care.
Take care,
Good night,
everybody.
everybody.
Have a good one.